Good evening, friends, fiends, and night owl supremes. Welcome to A Bit Late, where I hope you're in the mood for a cozy autumn story/poem because that's what we're doing tonight. This particular poem is called Prince Autumn by Carl Ewald. We will learn how summer prince and autumn prince walk hand in hand to make a new season come to be, and how winter, not really. So things do get frosty by the end, but you'll definitely want to make sure you're bundled up and cozy for this tale. Wear your warmest and most comfortable sweaters and clothes. Ensconce yourself in blankets and pillows. Maybe you have a fire going, or you have one going in your mind. Spicy autumn warm tea would be great and ideal for this poem. Might go cold by the end, you'll see. Something happens at the end of the poem, but anyway, do summon your animal familiars, light your most favorite autumn candles, turn on your fairy lights, and follow me for some autumn poetry. Sorry, hope you like it. Prince Autumn. On the top of the hills in the west stood the Prince of Autumn, and surveyed the land with his serious eyes. His hair and beard were dashed with gray, and there were wrinkles on his forehead, but he was good to look at, good, still and straight and strong. His splendid cloak gleamed red and green and brown and yellow and flapped in the wind. In his hand he held a horn. He smiled sadly and stood a while and listened to the fighting and the singing and the cries. Then he raised his head, put the horn to his mouth, and blew a lusty flourish. Summer goes his all-prospering way, autumn's horn is calling. Heather dresses the brown hill clay, winds whip crackling across the bay, leaves in the grove keep falling. All the trees of the forest shook from root to top, themselves not knowing why. All the birds fell silent together. The stag in the glade raised his antlers in surprise and listened. The poppy's scarlet petals flew before the wind. But high on the mountain and on the bare hills and low down in the bog, the heather burst forth and blazed purple and glorious in the sun, and the bees flew from the faded flowers of the meadow and hid themselves in the heather fields. But Autumn put his horn to his mouth again and blew. Autumn lords it with banners bright, of garish leaves held o'er him, quelling summer's eternal fight, heralding winter wild and white, while the blithe little birds flee before him. The Prince of Summer stopped where he stood in the valley and raised his eyes to the hills in the west. And the Prince of Autumn took the horn from his mouth and bowed low before him. "Welcome," said Summer. He took a step towards him and no more, as befits one who is the greater. But the Prince of Autumn came down over the hills and again bowed low. They walked through the valley hand in hand, and so radiant was Summer that, wherever they passed, none was aware of Autumn's presence. Oh no. The notes of his horn died away in the air, and one and all recovered from the shudder that had passed over them. The trees and birds and flowers came to themselves again and whispered and sang and fought. The rivers flowed, the rushes murmured, and the bees continued their summer orgy in the heather. Got some busy bees there. But wherever the princes stopped on their progress through the valley, it came about that the foliage turned yellow on the side where Autumn was. A little leaf fell from its stalk and fluttered away and dropped at his feet. The nightingale ceased singing, though it was eventide. The cuckoo was silent and flapped restlessly through the woods. The stork stretched himself in his nest and looked toward the south, but the princes took no heed. "Welcome," said Summer again. "Do you remember your promise?" "I remember," answered Autumn. Then the Prince of Summer stopped and looked out over the kingdom where the noise was gradually subsiding. "Do you hear them?" he asked. "Now do you take them into your gentle keeping." "I shall bring your produce home," said Autumn. "I shall watch carefully over them that dream. I shall cover up lovingly them that are to sleep in the mold. I will warn them thrice of winter's coming." Good job, Autumn. We gotta know when the winter's coming. "It is well," said Summer, and it is. They walked in silence for a time while the night came forth. "The honeysuckle's petals fell when you blew your horn," said Summer. "Some of my children will die at the moment when I leave the valley, but the nightingale and the cuckoo and the stork I shall take with me." Again the two princes walked in silence. It was quite still, only the owls hooted in the old oak. "You must send my birds after me," said Summer. "I shall not forget," replied Autumn. Then the Prince of Summer raised his hand in farewell and bade Autumn take possession of the kingdom. "I shall go tonight," he said, "and none will know save you. My splendor will linger in the valley for a while. And by the by, when I am far away and my reign is forgotten, the memory of me will revive once more with the sun and the pleasant days." Then he strode away in the night. But from the high tree top came the stork on its long wings, and the cuckoo fluttered out of the tall woods, and the nightingale flew from the thicket with her full-grown young. The air was filled with the soft murmurings of wings. Autumn's dominion had indeed begun on the night when Summer went away, with a yellow leaf here and a brown leaf there, but none had noticed it. Now it went at a quicker pace, and as time wore on, there came even more colors and greater splendor. The lime trees turned bright yellow and the beech bronze, but the elder tree even blacker than it had been. The bellflower rang with white bells where it used to ring with blue, and the chestnut tree blessed all the world with its 5 yellow fingers. The mountain ash shed its leaves that all might admire its pretty berries. The wild rose nodded with 100 hips. The Virginia creeper broke over the hedge in blazing flames. Then Autumn put his horn to his mouth and blew. The loveliest things of Autumn's pack in his motley coffers lay: red mountain berries, hips sweet as cherries, sloes blue and black he hung upon every spray. And the blackbird and thrush chattered blithely in the copsewood, which gleamed with berries, and 1,000 sparrows kept them company. The wind ran from one to the other, and puffed and panted to add to the fun. High up in the sky, the sun looked gently down upon it all, and the Prince of Autumn nodded contentedly and let his motley cloak flap in the wind. "I am the least important of the 4 seasons." Wait, no, you're not. You're like the best one, Autumn. Prince of Autumn has imposter syndrome. "I am the least important of the 4 seasons, and I am scarcely lord in my own land," he said. "I serve 2 jealous masters and have to please them both. But my power extends so far that I can give you a few glad days." Then he put his horn to his mouth and blew. "To the valley revelers hie, they are clad in autumnal fancy dresses. They are weary of green and faded tresses. Summer has vanished, winter is nigh. Hey, full de roll day for autumn." But the night after this happened, there was tremendous disturbance on the mountain peaks, where eternal snows had lain both in spring's time and summer's. It sounded like a storm approaching. The leaves grew frightened, the crows were silent, the wind held its breath. Prince Autumn bent forward and listened. "Is that the worst you can do?" shouted a hoarse voice through the darkness. Autumn raised his head and looked straight into Winter's great cold eyes. "Have you forgotten the bargain?" asked Winter. "No," replied Autumn, "I have not forgotten it." "Have a care," shouted Winter. The whole night through it rumbled and tumbled in the mountains. It turned so bitterly cold that the starling thought seriously of packing up, and even the red creeper turned pale. The distant peaks glittered with new snow, and the Prince of Autumn laughed no more. He looked out earnestly over the land, and the wrinkles in his forehead grew deeper. "Then it must be so," he said. Then he blew his horn. Autumn's horn blew a lusty chime, for the second time, for the second time. He'd well the call complying, fling seed to earth, fill sacks full girth, plump back and side, pad belt and hide, hold all wings close for flying. Then suddenly a terrible bustle rose in the land, for now they all understood. "Quick," said Autumn. The poppy and the bellflower and the pink stood thin and dry as sticks with their heads full of seed. The dandelion had presented each one of his seeds with a sweet little parachute. "Come, dear wind, and shake us," said the poppy. "Fly away with my seeds, wind," said the dandelion, and the wind hastened to do as they asked. But the beech cunningly dropped his shaggy fruit onto the hare's fur, and the fox also got one on his red coat. Cunning beech. "Quick now," said Autumn. "There's no time here to waste." The little brown mice filled their parlors from floor to ceiling with nuts and beech masts and acorns. The hedgehog had already eaten himself so fat that he could hardly lower his quills. Oh, buddy, no. Adorable. The hare and the fox and the stag put on clean white woolen things under their coats. The starling and the thrush and the blackbird saw their downy clothing and exercised their wings for the long journey. The sun hid himself behind the clouds and did not appear for many days. Such is the last days of autumn. It began to rain. The wind quickened its pace. It dashed the rain over the meadow, whipped the river into foam, and whistled through the trunks in the forest. "Now the song is finished," said the Prince of Autumn. Then he put his horn to his mouth and blew. Autumn's horn blew a lusty chime. "For the last time, for the last time. Wheeze close when need is sorest. Landbirds fly clear. Plunge frogs and mirror. Bee, lock your lair. Take shelter, bear. Fall last leaf in the forest." And then it was over. The birds flew from the land in flocks. The starling and the lapwing, the thrush and the blackbird all migrated to the south. Every morning before the sun rose, the wind tore through the forest and pulled the last leaves off the trees. Every day the wind blew stronger, snapped great branches, swept the withered leaves together into heaps, scattered them again, and at last laid them like a soft, thick carpet over the whole floor of the forest. The hedgehog crawled so far into a hole under a heap of stones that he remained caught between two of them and could move neither forwards nor backwards. Oh, poor guy, like doubly so. The sparrow took lodgings in a deserted swallow's nest. Good reuse. The frogs went to the bottom of the pond for good, settled in the mud with the tips of their noses up in the water and prepared for whatever might come. Frogs are fascinating in the winter. They're just so interesting what they do. Anyway, the Prince of Autumn stood and gazed over the land to see if it was bare and to waste so that winter storms might come buffeting at will and the snow lie wherever it pleased. Then he stopped before the old oak and looked at the ivy that clambered right up to the top and spread her green leaves as if winter had no existence at all. And while he looked at it, the ivy flowers blossomed. They sat right at the top and rocked in the wind. "Now I am coming," roared winter from the mountains. "My clouds are bursting with snow, and my storms are breaking loose. I can restrain them no longer." The Prince of Autumn bent his head and listened. He could hear the storm come rushing down over the mountains. A snowflake fell upon his motley cloak, and another, and yet another. For the last time he put his horn to his mouth and blew. "Thou greenest plant and hardiest, thou fairest, rarest, hardiest, right through unending hours, round summer, winter, autumn, spring, thy vigorous embraces cling. Look, ivy mine, 'tis I who sing, 'tis autumn winds thy flowers." Then he went away in the storm. The end of the poem. I guess autumn sort of just really does end, right? All of a sudden it's winter. There are signs of it coming, but there's no walking hand in hand with it like there is with summer. Like summer, when it's harvest time and certain crops are coming in, you sort of get the feeling of autumn, like, with maize crops or something like that. kind of like, oh, I can't wait for fall. The sun is really shining in yellow right now, but autumn will be amazing. And you can see hints of it here and there, but summer still prevails, just like the two princes walk. But then winter's not even a prince in this poem. It's just a force of nature. No princely talks, just, did you keep your bargain? Great, I'm gonna snow now. Which, cool, literally, I guess. But yeah, this was definitely a poem for a cozy day. Hopefully there's a fire going, because it got chilly at the end. But do let me know what you think, and if you'd like to hear some more, I don't know, poetry. I feel weird asking if you would like poetry, because I never really thought I would read poetry here. But let me know what you think, and if you have any other favorite poems that you would maybe like to hear here. Cool. But thank you for spending a cozy time. Now off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then, stay cozy and spooky, my friends. Good night.